The champagne glass felt cold in my hand as I watched my brother Evan laugh with his guests. His new house buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses. I'd spent 3 hours helping set up for this party, arranging flowers and organizing the food table. But now, standing in the corner, I felt invisible. That's when Hailey appeared beside me. My brother's wife wore a perfect smile as she leaned close to my ear. Her voice was sweet as honey, but her words cut like ice. "This house is for family, Jessica. You don't belong here." The words hit me like a slap. Around us, guests continued chatting and laughing, completely unaware of what just happened. I looked toward Evan, hoping he'd heard. He was showing off his new flat-screen TV to some college friends, completely oblivious. My throat tightened. My hands started shaking. Hailey stepped back, that fake smile still plastered on her face. She smoothed her dress and walked away like nothing happened. I stood frozen for a moment, processing what she'd said. Then, without a word to anyone, I set down my glass and walked toward the front door. My legs felt heavy with each step. But I wasn't leaving defeated. I was leaving with a decision forming in my mind. 6 months earlier, Evan had called me in a panic. I was eating dinner when my phone rang, his name flashing on the screen. "Jess, I need your help," he said, skipping any greeting. "The bank won't approve our mortgage. My credit score is too low from that stupid car loan mess last year." I set down my fork. "What do you need? Could you co-sign? Just to get us approved. I promise we can handle the payments. Hailey got that promotion and my business is picking up." I hesitated. Co-signing meant I'd be responsible if they couldn't pay. But this was my little brother. The same kid I'd helped with homework and drove to soccer practice when our parents worked late. "I'll sign, but don't tell Hailey. She'll flip," Evan said quickly. "Why would she flip if you can afford it? You know how she gets about independence. She wants us to do this on our own." I agreed to help. 2 weeks later, I signed the papers at the bank. The loan officer explained everything carefully. My name would be on the mortgage as a co-borrower, not just a co-signer. That meant I had rights to the property too. I did it out of love for my brother. I had no idea it would become a weapon. The undermining started small. First, Hailey stopped inviting me to their monthly family dinners. When I asked Evan about it, he shrugged. "She's been stressed with work. I'm sure she just forgot." Then I noticed I wasn't included in their group texts anymore. Family updates, photos of their weekend trips, even jokes, I was suddenly on the outside. When I saw them post pictures on social media with captions like, "Just family time," my stomach twisted. The worst part was watching Evan change. He started echoing Hailey's language when I brought up feeling excluded. "You're being dramatic, Jess. We're just busy building our life together." Building their life. Not our family. Their life. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was being sensitive. Maybe new marriages needed space to grow. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. The brother who used to call me every Sunday was disappearing, replaced by someone who made me feel like an outsider. When I drove by their house one evening and saw cars in the driveway, a dinner party I hadn't known about, I finally understood. This wasn't about space or busy schedules. Hailey was systematically cutting me out of my brother's life. I'd sacrificed a lot for Evan over the years. After our parents divorced when he was 16, I became his stability. I skipped grad school to work full-time so I could help pay for his at community college. When he wanted to start his contracting business, I lent him $12,000 from my savings. "I'll pay you back as soon as the business takes off," he'd promised. That was 3 years ago. The business was thriving now, but I'd never seen a penny of that money. Every time I mentioned it, Evan would say something like, "Soon, Jess, things are still tight." But apparently, things weren't too tight for the $7,500 leather sectional I saw when I helped them move in. Or the granite countertops Hailey insisted on upgrading. Or the week-long vacation to Mexico they'd posted about on Instagram. Sitting in my tiny apartment, eating takeout on my secondhand couch, I thought about all the dreams I'd put on hold. I'd wanted to get my master's degree, maybe travel to Europe, buy my own place. Instead, I'd poured my time, money, and energy into supporting my brother. And now his wife was telling me I didn't belong in the house my signature had helped them buy. The irony was suffocating. The day Evan asked me to co-sign was still clear in my memory. We'd met at the bank on a Tuesday morning. I remember because I'd taken time off work, something I rarely did. Are you sure about this? The loan officer had asked me. Co-borrowing is a big responsibility. If they default, you're fully liable for the debt. I looked at Evan sitting beside me, fidgeting with his hands. He'd always been anxious about big decisions. As kids, I was the one who helped him work through problems, who convinced him he could handle anything. I'm sure, I said, signing my name on multiple pages. The house was beautiful, a 3-bedroom colonial with a big backyard and a 2-car garage, more than I could ever afford on my salary. When we walked through it that first time, Evan's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. This is it, Jess. This is where Hailey and I will build our future. I was happy for him then. Genuinely happy. I pictured family barbecues in that backyard, holidays around the fireplace, maybe even kids playing in the living room someday. I never pictured standing in that same living room months later, being told I didn't belong there. Now, remembering that moment at the bank, I felt something cold settle in my chest. A decision was forming. The Monday after the housewarming party, I called my lawyer. Meryl Scott had handled my rental agreements and helped me with some work contracts over the years. She was smart, direct, and didn't waste time with pleasantries. I need to ask you about co-borrowing, I said, sitting in my car during lunch break. What happens if I want to remove my name from a mortgage? That's complicated, Meryl said. Usually the loan would need to be refinanced. The remaining borrowers would have to qualify on their own income and credit. And if they can't qualify, then the lender could demand full payment or start foreclosure proceedings. My heart pounded. How hard is it to remove yourself? Depends on the loan terms, but generally you can't be forced to stay on a mortgage you want off of. The bank might try to keep you on because you're additional security, but legally you have options. I thanked her and hung up, my hands shaking slightly. For the first time since the party, I felt something other than hurt and anger. I felt power. That evening, I pulled out the mortgage paperwork from my filing cabinet, page after page of legal language, but I found what I was looking for. There it was, my signature, making me equally responsible and equally entitled. 3 days after the party, my cousin Colleen sent me a text that made my blood boil. You need to see this. She'd attached a video file. I opened it with trembling fingers and watched myself from across the room at the party. The camera caught everything. Hailey approaching me, leaning in close, speaking directly into my ear. Then it showed me setting down my glass and walking out, my face clearly upset. Colleen had been filming something else entirely and caught our confrontation by accident. The video had audio, but you couldn't hear Hailey's words. To anyone watching, it looked like she'd said something and I'd stormed off. But that wasn't the worst part. Maya's follow-up text made my stomach drop. Hailey's been telling everyone you left because you were jealous of their success. She said you threw a tantrum because they didn't thank you enough in their housewarming speech. I played the video again, watching Hailey's body language. The way she looked around to make sure no one else was listening. The fake smile she wore. The casual way she destroyed me and then walked away. I made an appointment with my therapist, Dr. Rodriguez, for that Friday. I'd been seeing her on and off for 2 years, working through the complicated feelings about my family dynamics. Tell me what happened, she said, after I'd given her the basic story. I played the video on my phone, explaining what Hailey had said. Dr. Rodriguez watched carefully, then asked me to play it again. Look at her behavior, she said. She approaches you when you're alone. She looks around before speaking. She leans in close so no one can hear. This isn't spontaneous anger, Jessica. This is calculated. The word hit me like a truck. Calculated. I've been making excuses for her for months, I said, telling myself she's just stressed or needs time to adjust to having me around. What do you see now? She's been planning this, cutting me out systematically. The dinners, the texts, turning Evan against me, it's all been leading to this moment. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. And how does that make you feel? For the first time in months, I felt clarity instead of confusion. It makes me feel like I'm done protecting people who don't protect me. I left her office with a new understanding. This wasn't about family drama or miscommunication. This was about someone actively trying to destroy my relationship with my brother. and I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. The next Monday, I called Meryl again. This time, I wasn't asking hypothetical questions. I want to start the process to remove my name from the mortgage, I said. Are you certain? This will likely force them to refinance or face foreclosure. I'm certain. Meryl walked me through the steps. First, we'd send a formal letter to the bank requesting removal as a co-borrower. The bank would then evaluate whether Evan and Hailey could qualify for the loan amount on their own income. Given what you've told me about their finances, it's unlikely they'll qualify, Meryl warned. That afternoon, I sat in Meryl's office signing papers. My hands were steady now, no more shaking, no more doubt. As I signed the letter requesting removal from the mortgage, I thought about Hailey's words. You don't belong here. She was right. I didn't belong there. But neither did they, if they couldn't afford it without me. Meryl mailed the letter that day via certified mail. I had the tracking number and receipt. Within 5 business days, the bank would receive our formal request and begin the evaluation process. For the first time in months, I slept soundly that night. The call came exactly 1 week later. I was at work when my phone rang, Evan's number. Jess, what the hell did you do? His voice was panicked, almost screaming. I removed my name from your mortgage. You can't do that. The bank called. They're saying we might not qualify for the loan without you. They want to reassess everything. I could hear Hailey in the background, her voice high and frantic. Is she talking to her? Put it on speaker. Evan, calm down. This is exactly what Hailey wanted, your independence. Now you can have it. This isn't independence. This is sabotage. Hailey's voice came through clearly now. You're ruining us. I felt something cold and steady settle in my chest. I was never part of us, remember? Your wife made that very clear at your party. The line went quiet for a moment, then Hailey's voice, sharp and desperate. We can explain that. You misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand anything. I hung up. My phone immediately rang again. I turned it off and went back to work. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Within days, Hailey launched what I can only call a smear campaign. She called my Aunt Linda, my cousin Maya, even reached out to some of my old college friends on Facebook. Her story was consistent. I was jealous of their happiness, unstable since my last breakup, and trying to destroy their marriage because I couldn't stand to see Evan choose his wife over his sister. She's always been possessive of Evan, I heard she told my aunt. She can't handle that he has his own family now. The lies were elaborate and convincing. She painted me as the bitter, single sister who couldn't let go. Some family members started avoiding my calls. I could feel the whispers at a family barbecue that weekend. But Colleen hadn't forgotten about the video. That Sunday evening, I made a decision. I uploaded the video to YouTube as an unlisted video. Only people with the link could see it. I wrote a simple description. What really happened at the housewarming party. Then I sent the link to every family member Hailey had contacted. I included a short message. Since my words are being questioned, here's the video evidence. You can decide for yourselves what happened. By Monday morning, my phone was buzzing with texts. The tide was turning. The silence was deafening. After a weekend of family members watching the video, suddenly no one had anything to say about Jessica, the jealous sister. My Aunt Linda called Tuesday morning. Honey, I owe you an apology. I should have listened to your side before believing her stories. My cousin Aiden texted. Always knew something was off about her. Video doesn't lie. Even my dad called, something he rarely did. I'm sorry I doubted you, sweetheart. That girl's got problems. But the most important call came from my cousin Miguel, who'd always been close to Evan. Jess, I need you to know. I've been watching this whole situation for months. The way she cuts you out, the way Evan's changed, we see it now. For the first time in months, I didn't feel crazy. I wasn't imagining things or being overly sensitive. My family finally saw what I'd been experiencing. The video had done something Hailey never expected. It had revealed her true character to everyone who mattered. But I knew this was far from over. Hailey wasn't the type to back down when cornered. She was the type to attack. The retaliation came in the form of a legal letter. Evan and Hailey had hired an attorney, someone expensive, based on the letterhead. The letter demanded I cease and desist from interfering with their mortgage and restore the original loan agreement immediately. It accused me of financial harassment and intentional interference with contractual relations. I read it twice, then called Meryl. "They're trying to intimidate you," she said after reviewing the letter. "But they don't have a legal leg to stand on. You have every right to remove yourself from a financial obligation." "Can they force me to stay on the mortgage?" "Absolutely not. That would be like forcing someone to stay married against their will. Financial agreements require consent from all parties." Meryl drafted our response that afternoon. It was professional, direct, and included a warning. If they continued to harass me with frivolous legal threats, we would consider filing a countersuit for harassment. But the best part was the final paragraph. "Your clients are welcome to pursue legal action. However, discovery in such a case would require full disclosure of all financial records, communications, and potentially depositions from family members who witnessed the events leading to this dispute. In other words, go ahead and sue. Discovery will be brutal." They never responded to that letter. 2 weeks later, the bank made their decision. The certified letter arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I signed for it with shaking hands. "Notice of loan reassessment results" was printed in bold across the top. I scanned the formal language until I found the key sentence. "Based on current income verification and credit analysis, the remaining borrowers do not qualify for the requested loan amount. They had 60 days to secure alternative financing or face foreclosure proceedings." I set the letter down and stared at it for a long time. This was really happening. The house they'd been so proud of, the symbol of their perfect life together, was about to be taken away. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy." No signature, but I knew it was from Hailey. She'd probably gotten a similar letter. I stared at the message for a moment, then deleted it without responding. Happy wasn't the right word for what I felt. Relieved, maybe. Vindicated, definitely. But happy? No. I was sad it had come to this. 3 days later, Evan called. His voice was different, quieter, defeated. "Can we meet? Just you and me. Please." We agreed to meet at the coffee shop where we used to go when we were kids. It was neutral territory, a place filled with better memories. He looked terrible when I arrived. Dark circles under his eyes, his hair unwashed, wearing the same shirt I'd seen him in at the grocery store 2 days earlier. "Jess, I need you to co-sign again, just until we can figure something else out." "Evan, I know what you're going to say. I know Hailey was wrong at the party. I know she's been treating you badly, but please, for old time's sake, don't let us lose the house." For old time's sake. The phrase hit me like a slap. What about old time's sake when she was cutting me out of your life? What about old time's sake when she told me I didn't belong in a house I helped you buy? He looked down at his coffee. "I should have stood up for you." "Yes, you should have, but you didn't. And now you want me to bail you out again?" His shoulders sagged. "What am I supposed to do, Jess? We'll lose everything." "You were always the strong one," Evan said, his voice breaking. "Even when we were kids, when Dad left, when Mom had her breakdown, you held everything together. I let Hailey come between us because it was easier than standing up to her." The admission hung between us like a confession. I watched my little brother, 32 years old, but looking like the scared kid he'd been when our world fell apart. "I let her ruin us," he whispered. Those words hit harder than any apology. For months, I'd been waiting for him to see what was happening, to acknowledge that our relationship had been systematically destroyed. "Yeah, you did," I said quietly. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The coffee shop buzzed around us. Students studying, couples chatting, normal people living normal lives. Everything felt surreal. "I can't co-sign again, Evan. I won't put myself in a position where someone can hold my help against me." "I understand." He wiped his eyes with his sleeve. I don't know how to fix this." "You start by deciding what matters more, your marriage or your family, because right now, you can't have both." He nodded slowly, like he was finally understanding something that had been obvious to everyone else. Hailey's counterattack was swift and vicious. A letter arrived at my apartment, but not from their lawyer this time. This was personal, handwritten, 3 pages of rage and accusations. She called me manipulative, vindictive, and jealous. She accused me of financial abuse and said I was destroying an innocent family because of my own failures in life. The letter was unhinged, full of underlined words and exclamation points. But the most telling part was the end. You've always been jealous that Evan chose me over you. You can't stand that he loves me more than his pathetic, bitter sister. I read it twice, then took pictures of every page. This wasn't just anger. This was revealing. The mask was completely off now. I forwarded the photos to Meryl with a simple message, evidence of harassment. Her response came within an hour. This is actually helpful. It shows her true character and could support a restraining order if needed. File it somewhere safe. But Meryl's next message was even better. Also, she just admitted in writing that she's aware of your financial contribution to their home. That could be useful later. Hailey had just given me ammunition without realizing it. That weekend, I decided to go through my documents, organizing everything related to the mortgage situation. That's when I found something that made my blood run cold. Buried in a stack of old family papers was a deed from my grandmother's estate. She'd left a small piece of land, about 2 acres outside town, to both Evan and me. Equal shares. I hadn't thought about it in years. The land wasn't worth much, maybe $40,000 total. But as I read the deed carefully, I realized something was wrong. There was a second document paper clipped to the back, a sale agreement dated 8 months ago. Evan had sold his half of the property to Hailey's father for $20,000. But according to the deed, he couldn't sell without my consent as the other owner. I called Meryl immediately. Is this legal? Can he sell shared property without my signature? Absolutely not. This sale is invalid. Worse, if he received money for property he didn't have the right to sell, that's fraud. My hands shook as I processed this information. The betrayal went so much deeper than I'd realized. Hailey hadn't just tried to cut me out of Evan's life, she'd tried to steal from me. I made a decision that surprised even myself. There was a family barbecue that weekend at my Aunt Linda's house. Hailey and Evan would be there. Despite everything, I decided to go. I arrived late, carrying a folder of documents. The conversation died when I walked into the backyard. I could feel eyes on me, whispers floating around. Hailey was by the grill, wearing a sundress and that same fake smile. She looked genuinely shocked to see me. I have something to share, I announced to the group. Since we're all family here, I think everyone should know what's really been going on. I pulled out the deed and the fraudulent sale agreement. 8 months ago, Evan sold property that belonged to both of us. He sold it without my knowledge or consent. Hailey's face went white. Evan stood frozen by the picnic table. Here's what she didn't want you to see, I said, holding up the papers. Grandmother's land was sold illegally. The money went toward their house down payment. The silence was deafening. 20 family members stared at Evan and Hailey, processing what I just revealed. My Aunt Linda spoke first. Evan, is this true? He couldn't look at anyone. Hailey said it would be okay. She said we'd work it out later. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Family members started asking questions Hailey couldn't answer. My Uncle Dave, who'd been a cop for 20 years, looked at the documents and shook his head. This is fraud, plain and simple, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Hailey tried to control the narrative, but her explanations kept changing. First, she said they'd planned to tell me. Then she claimed it was a misunderstanding. Finally, she snapped. You people don't understand? Jessica has been sabotaging us from the beginning. She's jealous and vindictive and… Stop. The voice was my Aunt Linda's, but it was sharp and commanding. Just stop talking, Hailey. The barbecue ended early. Families gathered their kids and left without saying goodbye to Evan and Hailey. Even Hailey's own parents looked embarrassed, making excuses about having to leave. I watched from across the yard as Hailey turned on Evan. I couldn't hear the words, but her body language was clear. She was furious, and he was the target. For the first time, I felt sorry for my brother. He'd chosen his side, but now he was facing the consequences alone. That night, I got a text from my cousin Maya. Family group chat is exploding. Nobody's defending them anymore. The official notice came on a Monday morning, certified mail, just like before. But this time, it wasn't a warning. Notice of foreclosure proceedings. The bank had made their decision. Evan and Hailey had 30 days to vacate the property. The house would be auctioned to recover the outstanding loan balance. I sat in my car in the parking lot at work, reading the notice 3 times. It was really over. The beautiful colonial with the big backyard and 2-car garage was gone. My phone rang an hour later, Hailey's number. I almost didn't answer. "You destroyed us," she said without any greeting. Her voice was different, defeated, exhausted. "You destroyed yourselves," I replied calmly. "Where are we supposed to go? My parents won't let us move in because of what you told everyone. Evan's family won't even talk to us." "That's not my problem anymore." "How can you be so cold? He's your brother." "He stopped being my brother when he chose to let you treat me like garbage. Actions have consequences, Hailey." She hung up without another word. 2 days later, there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Evan standing in the hallway, 2 suitcases at his feet. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "I have nowhere else to go," he said simply. He looked broken. His eyes were red, his clothes wrinkled. He'd lost weight in the past few weeks. "Where's Hailey?" "Gone. She left yesterday, went to stay with some friend from college in another state. She said she couldn't handle the shame of staying here." I stared at my little brother, remembering all the times I'd helped him when he had nowhere else to go. After Dad left, when he got kicked out of his first apartment, when his business almost failed. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him in. "You can stay on the couch, short-term only, and we need to talk, really talk, about everything that happened." He nodded, dragging his suitcases inside. "I know I don't deserve this." "No, you don't, but you're still my brother." That night, we talked for hours. Really talked for the first time in years. Evan admitted things I'd never expected to hear. "I knew what she was doing," he said, staring at his hands. "The dinners, the group texts, the way she talked about you. I knew it was wrong, but I was scared of her." "Scared?" "She had this way of making me feel like I was nothing without her. Like I was lucky she chose me, and if I didn't do exactly what she wanted, she'd leave." I saw my brother clearly for the first time in years, not as the villain in my story, but as another victim of Hailey's manipulation. "You have to face what you let happen," I told him. "You let her destroy our relationship. You let her steal from me. You chose her over everyone who actually loved you." "I know." His voice was barely a whisper. "I don't know how to fix it. You start by being honest, with yourself, with me, with everyone, and you start making amends." He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Can you forgive me?" I thought about it for a long moment. "Eventually, maybe, but not until you prove you've actually changed." 6 months later, I was signing papers in a real estate office. After everything that happened, I decided to buy my own place. A small condo downtown, fully mine, no shared anything. The realtor handed me the keys with a smile. "Congratulations. First-time homeowner?" "First-time sole homeowner," I corrected. Evan had found his own apartment after staying with me for 2 months. He was in therapy, working on understanding how he'd let his life get so derailed. We talked once a week now, careful conversations, rebuilding trust slowly. He'd paid me back the $12,000 he owed, plus interest, money from selling his tools and equipment. It was a small step, but an important one. That evening, my phone rang. Meryl, my lawyer. "I have news about the house," she said. "It sold at auction yesterday." "How much?" "Less than they owed on the mortgage. And there's more. Apparently Hailey filed for bankruptcy last month. Listed your brother as one of her creditors." I wasn't surprised. Hailey had never learned to take responsibility for her actions. "What about the land she stole?" "Still working on that. But we'll get your money back, plus damages." A year later, I stood in my own kitchen, making coffee and watching the sunrise through my window. My condo was small but perfect, hardwood floors, big windows, and most importantly, it was mine. I thought about Hailey's words at that housewarming party. "You don't belong here." She was right, in a way. I didn't belong in a house built on manipulation and lies. I belonged here, in a space I'd earned honestly. My phone buzzed with a text from Evan. "Coffee this Sunday?" We'd been having weekly coffee dates for months now, slowly rebuilding our relationship. It would never be the same as before, but it was something. I'd heard through family that Hailey was living under her maiden name in Phoenix, working at a retail job. She'd tried to contact Evan a few times, but he'd blocked her number. Some lessons come hard, but they stick. I didn't destroy them for revenge. I didn't cancel their mortgage payment to be cruel. I did it to stop destroying myself. The house was gone. The marriage was over. But I was still here, stronger than before, and I finally belonged exactly where I was supposed to be, in a life that was completely, authentically mine.